When I was a young quote-unquote boy growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, I was subjected to frequent haircuts. These were incredibly trying ordeals that resulted in a lot of screaming and countless attempts to escape from the barbershop. And even when those lessened and I surrendered to my crew cuts, I always felt a sense of, I don't know how to put it, loss? Not fitting in? Long hair was something I always wanted to try out, always something I wanted to wear. But I was a quote-unquote boy, a good Catholic boy who wanted to do well by his mommy and daddy, who wanted to be a perfect angel for his Catholic school teachers. And while, as a society, we've long since normalized men with long hair, in the Catholic universe I was forced to inhabit, that wasn't allowed. And my grade school experience was fine, nothing out of the ordinary. I got straight A's, honors on literally every report card. I wasn't really bullied that much, but I did feel isolated and alone to an extent. I wasn't into the things other boys were. I read Fear Street novels and more girly stuff like the Babysitter's Club. I also wasn't really into sports then either. Maybe professional wrestling, but that's it. And there was a show that premiered while I was in 5th grade that really spoke to me. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Most of my classmates thought it was awful, horrible. They'd rather watch Animaniacs or Bonkers. I was like the only person in class who actually liked this thing. But there was nothing like it on television. Cool battles fought by real-life teenagers with attitude that you really saw yourself in. Kids that you wanted to be. And I personally wanted to be Kimberly, for some reason. But being Kimberly wasn't an option because I was a boy. And people who had sex changes were evil, immoral people that you needed to humiliate. That's the message I took away from Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, the hottest movie of 1994, it felt like. But there was someone else who appealed to my then undiscovered desire to be a girl. A safe way to express what I know now to be gender feelings. Tommy Oliver, the Green Ranger, played by Jason David Frank. I mean, from the minute he appeared at Angel Grove's local juice bar, Tommy was the epitome of cool. The guy had the most awesome Zord and the best costume, and he had long, untamed hair, looking far more like a wild child than Nerdy Billy or Straight-Laced Jason. Fitting because he was originally introduced as a villain before joining the Rangers as a good guy after wreaking havoc on them for 5 straight episodes. And even if he was a little flaky and forgetful, he still had an edge during his initial run, right up until he was depowered at the end of the Green Candle 2-parter. But when Tommy inevitably returned after popular demand, he looked different. The wild mullet became a slicked back ponytail. This would become Tommy's iconic look, but I initially feared it was a haircut. I was actually a little forlorn here. How could he do this to his beautiful hair? It wasn't until the season 2 opening credits that the truth was really obvious. Hallelujah, hallelujah. That mane, that glorious, luscious mane. Now, granted, Tommy just stuck to the ponytail for the most part, but it meant something to me to see someone with considerably long hair having such a prominent role on the #1 children's program in the entire world. especially when Tommy became the White Ranger and the new team leader midway through the second season. Tommy's look was, as I said, iconic, and while I admit I'm probably making a bigger deal out of it than it was, to me it really did drive home the show's embrace of diversity. Power Rangers was a show that celebrated diversity not only in skin color, but in presentation, especially when that came close to flouting gender norms. It was a safe space. I didn't know I was transgender for many decades. I did, however, begin experiencing a period of wrongness with my body. Not that I was meant to be a girl, or agender, or anything other than a guy, but it really just felt like something was off. And that feeling increased in intensity over the years. In 1997, two things happened. One was Jason David Frank's departure from Power Rangers. Tommy was the last of the original team left standing. While Power Rangers was a safe space to a queer girl like myself, albeit one so closeted she didn't know she was a queer girl, it wasn't a safe space to actual LGBTQIA talent. David Yost experienced years of homophobia on the set that culminated with his acrimonious departure during Power Rangers Zeo in 1996. While Yost has stated that no actor was responsible for this abuse, it was still enough to drive him into conversion therapy, and that's just horrifying. The other was my entrance into high school, an all-boys Catholic high school. The bullying began on the first day. I vividly remember it. I was late for class. I couldn't get books into my book bag in time, and I entered the classroom awkwardly holding a huge stack of books in my hands. Instantly, the entire class just looked and erupted in uproarious laughter, including the teacher. I was mortified. And from then, I was the kid who got picked on by everyone, especially the upperclassmen. When I tried to befriend other kids at school, I was shunned. I sat by myself during every lunch period for about a year. I would be harassed by people who would just ask me pointless questions, making me vastly uncomfortable. I would hear my classmates shit talk me under their breath. I was openly mocked for my so-called slurred speech. Even teachers would belittle me if I belted out the wrong answers during class. And when I got home, my mom would just grill me about schoolwork, about my grades, about how privileged I was to be in honors classes. All this while the act of getting out of bed and existing just became unbearable. It's a miracle I lived through freshman year of high school. One of the reasons was Power Rangers. Power Rangers had become Power Rangers in space by then, adopting a riveting serialized narrative. A new class had arguably the best chemistry since the original 6, and 2 new Rangers. Another dashing long-haired leader and his BFF that clearly is more than a BFF. Look, they're so goddamn gay. This series galvanized the then nascent fandom. I was part of that fandom. Posting under the name Hulk Skywalker, look, it was 1997, give me some fucking slack here. I participated in the eager speculation about everything involving the show that year. I also developed a hyperfixation on all things Fox Kids, something I never really let go of. I could be a bit of a little shit, and I know I annoyed a few people, but this was my fucking lifeline here. It was a place I could escape to every day after school, a respite from the stress of just surviving the 8 hours of hell I had to endure every day. It was a place I could unmask be myself, and be the kind of annoying 14-year-old I truly could be. And it remained my lifeline through high school. The bullying never really got better. Sophomore year was the worst of it. It got so bad that when the horrifying school shooting at Columbine happened, everyone was all of a sudden nice to me. I overheard the truth via gossip. This was because they thought I was going to shoot up the school. While the bullying improved somewhat by the time I reached senior year, among my peers I never felt right. I always felt different, inferior, defective, broken. Part of it was, well, when you're a trans girl in an all-boys high school, that gives your gender dysphoria rocket fuel. But it's impossible to endure abuse like that without becoming a permanently different person. I am still, at all times, constantly paranoid that people dislike me. It's hard for me to open up to anyone, especially if I perceive that I have done something wrong. Power Rangers was my rock. I continued to be active in the online fandom, to the point where I visited friends from the fandom in person. I broke news about the historic Fox Family worldwide sale to Disney, and on the back of that became a moderator and news reporter for Toon Zone, a popular web forum, forming friendships that have lasted. But eventually, life forces people apart from their friends and the things that they love. I got a job at the local grocery store, and I ended up making that my identity. That frankly replaced the Power Rangers fandom as my way to self-medicate my dysphoria and trauma, and eventually, I stopped taking care of myself. I lost all sense of self, all sense of a future. I became a caregiver to my dad and absolutely had no plan for what I would do when he was gone. When I started seeing an autism-focused therapist, I started taking stock of myself. Eventually, I hit that trans flag-colored iceberg that so many deeply closeted trans people encounter. And when I finally stumbled into a realization that a small part of me had known since I was screaming in the barbershop as a 6-year-old, I knew the first thing I really wanted to do was grow out my hair. I remembered Tommy's long hair. I remember that even guys could have long hair. And I figured, let's grow it out. Yeah, I'm a girl, but maybe I can start passing as a guy with long hair first. So I did. And I've loved every second of it. Unfortunately, this gave me problems at the store. I became very high up at the grocery store I was looking at, and, well, they forced me to get it cut. When I did that, I felt the most crippling wave of dysphoria I had ever felt. Maybe I wasn't screaming at the barber or making plans to run away, but the weight of being forced back into a box that I no longer felt comfortable inhabiting was brutal and demoralizing. Even worse, every coworker complimented the haircut, and every time I died a little inside. Eventually, that led me to make plans to depart that job, which I did formally at the start of this year. But the process of coming out led me back to Power Rangers. I sort of kept tabs on it enough since then, but I hadn't watched the full series since the Fox Kids days. With my video project and my rediscovery of my sense of self, I really did start catching up, notably with Cosmic Fury. This season made some pretty significant inroads as far as representation. A queer couple, a female Red Ranger. True trans representation wasn't there, sadly, Though one line of Zato's is a very pointed statement on trans rights.
Nobody should have to feel like they don't belong in their body.
Zato.
I started estrogen a few months before Cosmic Fury came out. I'm actually coming up on a year. I returned to growing out my hair. While it's messy as hell, it looks great. It looks better than I expected. And in true trans girl fashion, it's led to me taking like all of the selfies. When I look at my face, I'm content. For the very first time ever, frankly. I'm probably not getting it as long as Tommy got it. I actually kinda like the length I have it at now. But it's me. It's entirely me. And I'm happy. I'm truly happy. For the first time. I'm me.